Shit ain't what it used to be, is it? This nigga Puff got 50 months. I don't like talking about this, but I'm gonna do it. Here's my thing about Puffy. And I gotta state my bias. Years ago, I got attacked on stage in California at the Hollywood Bowl. Now, this was a long time ago. At this time, Charlie Kirk was alive and well. Well, this is another reason it's hard to talk in America, because, you know, if you talk for a living and see Charlie Kirk get murdered that way, I'm gonna be honest, nigga, I was shook. I mean, Charlie Kirk is the wholesome white guy, and they killed this motherfucker. I said, these whites. We've never seen them like this. They're playing for keeps. And then remember, the next day in the news, when all the information was still shoddy, they came out, they were like, apparently there were transgender messages inscribed on the bullets. I was at home like, oh no! I'm dead as fried chicken. And then weeks later, they said what was written on the bullets. One of the bullets had Bella Ciao, Bella Ciao, Bella, Bella, Bella Ciao written on it. Another bullet had written on it, if you're reading this, you're gay. I was at home like, nigga, I'm gonna need to see these bullets. How the fuck is this nigga writing whole paragraphs on bullets? How big are these bullets? What is this nigga, a watchmaker? He can inscribe all this shit on a bullet? I'm not making light of Charlie Kirk dying, but I'm not sure what it means. And I'm not sure I believe what they say it means. I'll tell you what I don't believe. And the whites were quick to say this. They said, Charlie Kirk is this generation's Martin Luther King. No, he's not. Yeah, that's a reach. You know, they both got murdered in a terrible fashion. They both got shot in the neck, but that's about where those similarities end. Because Charlie Kirk is a motherfucking internet personality. No, by design. Fundamentally, he can't function like Dr. King. Internet niggas are negative because they have to be. Because nobody will engage them unless they say shit that makes them upset. That's Charlie Kirk. Could you imagine Dr. King was behaving like Charlie Kirk? Smash that like button and subscribe. Follow me for more content like this. I believe all black people should be free. Change my mind. The Congress took a vote that October 14th will be Charlie Kirk Remembrance Day, and everybody voted for it. No, I'm not gonna boo it. You can remember, no. Remember that nigga if you want to. And remember him however you want to. But I do know that most of those Congress people voted for that because they're afraid of political violence. I'm telling you, it's easier to talk in Saudi Arabia. I was on stage not long ago in the States, and niggas got mad because I said, well, you know, maybe Puff will get off. And I said, I hope so. And the crowd was like, boo. Oh, okay, look, it's not that I think Puff is right, but when I got attacked in LA at the Hollywood Bowl, people forget Puff was the guy that tackled my attacker. He saved my life. It's a hard nigga to be mad at after that. I had security that night, but you know what I mean? Them niggas they just wasn't ready. Them niggas had some slippery shoes on or something. They ran out. All them niggas slipped and fell. And Puffy got my attacker and tackled him. And then years later, when I heard about that baby oil, I was like, what did those niggas slip on? $1,000 bottles of baby oil, that's a lie. But remember, he wasn't on trial for having 1,000 bottles of baby oil because it's not a crime to have 1,000 bottles of baby oil. It's gross. It's not illegal. But I'm gonna tell you something else I haven't said, but this is true. In LA one night, I shouldn't even tell, fuck it. I've been to Puffy's house. No, I didn't see none of the stuff they said in that trial. I walked to that nigga's living room, house was clean, traction on the floor, nothing slippery, walk right through. Perfectly normal evening. The only thing in hindsight, but at the time it didn't mean nothing to me. I didn't think about it until after I found all that stuff out, but in hindsight it was fucked up. But we was on this back patio, and we was drinking and laughing, talking, and then nigga Puff starts swirling his drink like this, and he goes, so Dave, he goes, what are you into? You know me, I was like, I don't know, nigga, books, video games, I didn't know that was my big chance to fuck Cassie. God bless her. I'm not making light of her. What she went through was terrible. But remember, because they kept showing this video of him beating her up in a hotel hallway, which is a terrible video. But he wasn't on trial for that. If you remember, he paid her for that before the federal charges ever came up. He paid her $35 million, is what I heard, which doesn't make it right, but I mean, come on, nigga. I do know niggas that have fought Floyd Mayweather for less money than that. And them niggas had to fight for 36 minutes. But Cassie is a gangster. She did something that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. She had to testify about her sex life. Boy, that's tough. God save us all from that. Anything you say about sex publicly is gonna sound bad. Even if you're talking about fucking your wife face to face. If the judge is like, tell me about did you fuck your wife face to face? Yes, Your Honor, I did. But could you describe the account? Well, yes, I looked at her in her cold, bored eyes, and then I pulled those big panties aside, and it's like a bush that just screams, I don't give a fuck, and I just, you know what I mean? Just power through it, you know what I mean? Cassie had to do way harder than that. Them questions, they was asking her all kinds. Did Sean Combs pee in your mouth? I was like, oh my God. She didn't hesitate. Guess what? I'm sorry.
Here is a 30-minute commentary, written as a continuous natural monologue from a woman watching the video Dave Chappelle on comedy. Soft exhale, settling into a chair, sound of a cup clinking against a saucer. All right, I'm about to hit play. You already know the title, Dave Chappelle on comedy. That's a dangerous sentence, because when Dave talks about comedy, he's not just talking about jokes. He's talking about warfare. He's talking about philosophy. He's talking about the exact millimeter of space between what's true and what's cruel. So let's just get comfortable. The video starts. Typical Dave, probably sitting on a stool, cigarette burning in an ashtray, wearing something comfortable. He's got that look. You know the one. The look of a man who has seen the monster in the dark, walked up to it, made it laugh, and then walked away. First thing he's talking about is the stage. He always does this. He'll say something like, "The stage is a dangerous place." And people in the audience chuckle, but they don't really get it. They think he means he's afraid of bombing. No, he means the stage is a lie detector. You can stand up there with the most perfectly crafted joke in the world. A joke that killed in your living room. A joke that killed at the club in Ohio. But if your spirit is wrong that night, the audience knows. They smell it. They're like sharks. Dave knows this better than anyone, because he walked away from $50 million. $50 million. He walked away because the laughter started to sound like screaming to him. And that's the first thing he's getting at here. Comedy is not about the money. Money is the excuse people use to sell their souls. Dave sold his soul back to the devil and kept the receipt. Now he's leaning forward. That thing where his voice gets real low, almost a whisper. He's talking about the difference between a joke and a statement. See, this is the part that always gets the Twitter warriors confused. He says, a comedian's job is to find the line, not to cross it, but to dance on it. And he uses this metaphor. He says being a comedian is like being a trapeze artist without a net. But the floor is made of needles. And if you fall, you don't just get hurt. You get cancelled. You get misunderstood. You get turned into a headline. But here's the nuance that Dave is a master of. He's not complaining about being censored. That's boring. That's what bad comedians do. They blame the audience. Dave is talking about something much deeper. He's talking about the responsibility of being free. He says, just because you can say a word doesn't mean you should. And just because you shouldn't doesn't mean you can't. See how that works? It's a knot. He's telling you that the tension is the point. If there is no tension in the room, if everyone agrees already, you aren't doing comedy. You're doing a press release. I remember watching that special. You know the one where he talks about the baby. The one where he tells the story about the baby looking at him. People lost their minds. But if you actually listen to Dave, and I mean really listen, not just wait for your turn to be offended, he's not telling you what to think. He's telling you what he saw. He's holding up a mirror to the absurdity of the human condition. And that's the thread running through this whole video. He's explaining that comedy is the only art form that requires the audience to be complicit. A painting doesn't need you to finish it. A song plays whether you clap or not. But a joke is a gift. You have to accept it for it to work. And if you reject it, the joke doesn't die. The connection dies. Now he's telling a story. He's talking about a time he performed for a crowd that was hostile. This must be early in his career. Maybe the killing them softly era. He said he walked out and a woman in the front row had her arms crossed. Just like that. Arms crossed, face like thunder. He said he didn't tell a joke. He just looked at her for like 10 seconds, which in comedy is an eternity. 10 seconds of silence in a club feels like 10 years in a tomb. And then he said, "Ma'am, I see you. I see you're not happy to be here. I just want you to know I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not going to try to make you laugh. I'm going to try to make everyone else laugh. And you're going to sit there and watch them have fun." And apparently that broke her. By the end of the set, she was crying laughing. Because he acknowledged the conflict. He didn't pretend it wasn't there. That's the secret sauce right there. Authenticity. You can't fake it on that stage. Dave is saying that a lot of modern comedy fails because the comedian is trying to protect something. Their brand, their image, their sponsorship deal. If you get on stage worried about losing a Netflix special, you are already dead. Dave walked away from 50 million. He is immune to your threat. That is his superpower. He has nothing left to lose except his own respect. And he guards that like a dragon. He's shifting now. He's talking about the difference between punching up and punching down. He hates that phrase. You can see it on his face. He wrinkles his nose like he smelled something sour. He says, who decides which way is up? Gravity? The news? He makes a good point. In a room of 10 people, the power dynamic is different for every single person. He tells a joke about a homeless man. Is that punching down? What if the homeless man laughs the hardest? What if the joke makes the homeless man feel seen? Dave argues that the only rule in comedy is intent. And the problem is, you can't prove intent. You can only feel it. And that's why comedy is scary, because it requires trust. And we live in an age where trust is the rarest currency. I'm about halfway through this video now. He's slowed down. He's drinking something. Water, probably. Or tea. He's reflective. He starts talking about his father. This is where the commentary gets really tender. He says his father taught him that the funniest people in the world are the ones who have suffered the most. He says, pain plus time equals comedy. That's the formula. He actually writes it in the air with his finger. Pain plus time equals comedy. So when you see Dave making a joke about something horrible, he's not being insensitive. He's telling you that enough time has passed for him to process the horror. He's inviting you to process it with him. Laughter is the sound of relief. It's the sound of your shoulders dropping, because the monster isn't at the door anymore. The monster is on the stage, doing a little dance. That's the alchemy of it. Dave turns lead into gold. He turns trauma into tickets. He's telling a specific story now. He talks about a friend of his who died. A comedian, actually. Young kid. Funny as hell. But the kid couldn't take the silence. The kid needed a laugh every 3 seconds or he felt like he was dying. Dave says, that's a sickness. That's addiction. The laugh is a drug. And Dave had to learn to be okay with the silence. He had to learn to let a heavy thing sit in the room. He says sometimes the audience needs to feel the weight of the thing before you lift it off them with the punchline. And this is where I think a lot of people miss the point of Dave Chappelle entirely. They think he's a provocateur. They think he's a troll. But listen to the pacing here. He's not rushing. He's not throwing Molotov cocktails. He's building a campfire. He's saying, come here. It's cold out there. Let me tell you a story about why the world is broken. And then I'm going to make you laugh at the brokenness. And in that laugh, we're going to fix it for just a second. He mentions the old days, the Chappelle show days. He doesn't look back fondly. He looks back like a soldier looking at a battlefield. He says success nearly killed him. Not failure, success. Because when you're that famous, you lose the ability to walk down the street. And if you can't walk down the street, you can't see people. And if you can't see people, you can't tell jokes about them. Because jokes are observation, and observation requires proximity. He had to go to Ohio. He had to become a regular person again. He had to go to the PTA meetings. He had to get yelled at by his neighbors. That's where the comedy lives. Not in a Hollywood boardroom. Not in a writer's room with 12 people who all think the same. Now he's getting a little angry. Not at the audience in the video. At the industry. He's talking about how they try to sanitize everything. How they try to put trigger warnings on everything. He laughs. That deep, rumbling laugh. He says, a trigger warning for a joke. The joke is the trigger. That's the whole point. If you don't want to be triggered, go to a museum. Oh wait, the museum has statues that are triggering too. Go to church. Oh wait, the church has, never mind. He's saying that you can't bubble wrap the human experience. Comedy is the last place where you are allowed to be wrong. In fact, you have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to say the stupid thing, the clumsy thing, the thing that comes out sideways, and then fix it in real time. That's what a live show is. It's a conversation. It's a negotiation. If you want perfectly curated, risk-free entertainment, watch a sitcom with a laugh track. But don't confuse that with comedy. That's product. That's merchandise. We're coming up on the last 10 minutes of the video. Dave is wrapping up a long parable. He's talking about a time he went to a small club in Mississippi. A real dive. And there was a guy in the back who was clearly racist. Just sitting there, scowling. Dave told a joke about race. A hard joke. A joke that made the room gasp. And then he looked at that guy, and he told another joke. And another. And by the end of the night, that guy came up to him and said, I didn't want to laugh, but damn. And Dave says, that's the win. Not changing his vote. Not making him march in a protest. Just making him feel a shared humanity for 45 minutes. That's the win. And that's the lesson of this whole video. Dave Chappelle isn't trying to save the world. He's trying to remind the world that we used to know how to talk to each other. We used to know how to sit in a dark room and laugh at the same absurd tragedy. Comedy is the original social network. It's analog. It's breathing the same air. It's risking being misunderstood for the chance to be truly seen. He's standing up now. The video is ending. He takes a bow, not a deep dramatic one, just a nod. He says, "Thank you for listening. That's the hard part. Listening." And he walks off. The screen goes black, and you're just sitting there, realizing that for 30 minutes, you weren't just watching a comedian talk about comedy. You were watching a philosopher talk about survival. You were watching a poet dissect the atom of human connection. And that's why he's the best. Not because he's the funniest, but because he's the bravest. And in 2026, bravery is the funniest thing in the world. All right, I need a cigarette now. Here is the extended commentary, now written as a much longer, immersive monologue. It's designed to feel like you're sitting next to someone who just keeps going, circling back, adding layers, and refusing to stop because the subject demands it. Deep breath, a long, slow exhale, the sound of a lighter clicking, maybe a candle, maybe a cigarette. Ice clinking in a glass. She presses play. All right, let's do this properly. Dave Chappelle on comedy. That title is a trap, you know. Because when most people say they're going to talk about comedy, they tell you war stories. They tell you about the time the mic stand broke, or the heckler who cried, or the road gig in Delaware where they played to a room of 7 people and a cat. That's not what this is. Dave doesn't tell war stories. He tells origin stories. He tells the mythology of why we laugh in the first place. So the video starts. No flashy intro. No music swell. Just Dave. He's sitting on a wooden stool, the kind you'd find in a high school art room. He's wearing a blazer over a t-shirt. The blazer is nice, but it's wrinkled. He doesn't care. He's got a cigarette burning in an ashtray to his left. He never smokes it. He just lets it burn. He says once in an interview that the smoke is a timer. It reminds him that everything is temporary. The joke, the applause, the controversy, all of it goes up in smoke. He looks at the camera, or maybe he looks at the audience in the room. It's hard to tell. That's part of his magic. He erases the fourth wall until you forget there ever was a wall. He starts talking. His voice is low, gravelly, like he just woke up from a nap he didn't want to take. And he says, the stage is a dangerous place. Because they think he's being dramatic. But watch his face. He's not smiling. He means it literally. He means the stage is physically dangerous, mentally dangerous, spiritually dangerous. He tells a quick story, a micro story really, about a comedian he knew in the 90s. A guy who was brilliant, quick as a whip. He could do 20 minutes on the price of a stamp. But one night, he got on stage and the lights were too bright. And he said something he didn't mean, something dark, something that came from a place he hadn't healed yet. And the audience laughed because they thought it was a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a confession. And that comedian never came back to the stage. Not because he bombed, because he told the truth by accident. And the truth scared him more than silence ever could. Dave sits with that for a second. He lets the silence hang. This is the first lesson of the video. Comedy is not about making people laugh. Comedy is about making people feel. Laughter is just the symptom. The disease is truth. Now he shifts. He leans forward. His elbows are on his knees. He looks like a coach giving a halftime speech to a team that's losing. He starts talking about money, specifically the $50 million, the offer from Comedy Central, the one he walked away from. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think he walked away because he was stressed, or because he was using drugs, or because he had a breakdown. Dave sets the record straight. He says, I walked away because the laughter started to sound like screaming to me. He explains it slowly, carefully, like he's teaching a masterclass. He says that when he was doing Chappelle's show, he would watch the sketches backstage, and the crew would be laughing. The producers would be laughing. He was watching a white cameraman laugh at a sketch about race, and he didn't know why the cameraman was laughing. Was he laughing with Dave? Or was he laughing at the character? Or was he laughing because he was nervous? Or because he was cruel? Dave couldn't tell. And that uncertainty, that fog, that's what broke him. Because comedy requires clarity. If you don't know why the laugh is happening, you're not a comedian. You're a puppet. He says, I wasn't depressed. I was confused. There's a difference. Depression is feeling nothing. Confusion is feeling everything at once, and none of it fits together. So he left. He went to Africa. He stayed in a small town where nobody knew his face. He walked down dirt roads. He bought fruit from a market. He sat under a tree and watched children play soccer. And after a few months, he heard a joke in his head. A real joke. A joke about a monkey and a politician. And he laughed, alone, under that tree. And that's when he knew he was ready to come back. Because the laughter was his again. It wasn't borrowed. It wasn't contaminated. It was his. This is the part of the video where the audience in the room is dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Because Dave isn't telling a joke. He's telling a testimony. And he's not asking for your sympathy. He's asking for your understanding. He's saying, I am not a product. I am a person. And a person cannot survive being a product. Now, he changes gears. He starts talking about technique, about the craft. And this is where the commentary gets really juicy for anyone who thinks they understand comedy. He says, there are two types of comedians. There are joke tellers and there are truth tellers. The joke teller memorizes a setup and a punchline. The truth teller walks into the room, looks around, and says what everyone is afraid to say. He gives an example. He says a joke teller would write a joke about an airline losing their luggage. I flew Delta. My bag went to Tokyo. I went to Chicago. My bag had a better vacation than me. That's a fine joke. It's clean. It's safe. It gets a chuckle. But a truth teller gets on stage and says, you know why airline customer service is so bad? Because they know you have no other choice. You are trapped in a metal tube at 30,000 feet. You are not a customer. You are a hostage. And the only difference between you and a hostage is that the hostage gets to negotiate. That's not just a joke. That's an observation about power. That's a thesis statement about capitalism, disguised as a punchline. And that's what Dave does. He doesn't tell jokes. He delivers diagnoses. And the laughter is just the patient realizing they're sick. He pauses. He takes a sip of water. He's stalling, but it's a deliberate stall. He's letting the last thing land. He's building rhythm. This is the sign of a master. Amateurs rush. Masters wait. They know that silence is a tool. It's like a spice. A little bit wakes up the dish. Too much ruins it. Dave uses silence like salt. He sprinkles it exactly where it needs to go. He starts talking about the audience now. Specifically, the heckler. He says, a heckler is not your enemy. A heckler is your partner. They are giving you energy. It's negative energy, but energy is energy. You just have to transmute it. He tells a story about a show in Detroit. Early 2000s. A drunk guy in the front row. Big guy. Ex-military, probably. The guy keeps yelling, you ain't funny. You ain't funny. Dave tries to ignore him. Does work. The guy gets louder. The rest of the audience is getting uncomfortable. Security is moving in. But Dave holds up his hand. He tells security to wait. He walks to the edge of the stage. He crouches down. He looks the guy in the eye and he says very quietly, you're right. I'm not funny tonight. But you came to this club. You paid a cover charge. You bought a 2-drink minimum. You sat in the front row and now you're yelling at me. That means you wanted something from me. What did you want? The guy is stunned. He doesn't know what to say. Dave waits. 10 seconds. 15. Finally, the guy mumbles, I wanted to laugh. Dave says, me too, brother. Me too. So let's try something. Let's both shut up for 60 seconds. And if I don't make you laugh in that minute, I'll buy your drinks for the rest of the night. The guy agrees. Dave stands up. He doesn't tell a joke. He just looks at the guy. He makes a face. a silly face, crosses his eyes, wiggles his ears. The guy tries not to laugh. He really tries. But after about 45 seconds, he snorts. Then he laughs. Then the whole room laughs. And Dave says, "See? You're not a heckler. You're just lonely. And that's okay. So am I." That's the story. And Dave tells it without ego, without gloating. He's not bragging about how he won. He's bragging about how he connected. Because that's the real victory in comedy. Not destroying the heckler, befriending them. Now he gets into the controversial stuff. He knows it's coming. You can see him brace for it. He starts talking about the difference between punching up and punching down. He hates them because they're lazy. They pretend that power is a ladder and comedy is a fist. But Dave says power is a web and comedy is a scalpel. He says, who decides which way is up? The person who is most offended? The person with the most Twitter followers? The person who cries the loudest? That's not a moral system. That's a tyranny of the sensitive. He tells a joke, a real joke. He says, I was walking down the street in New York. A homeless man asks me for money. I give him $20. He looks at the bill. He looks at me. He says, this is counterfeit. I say, no, it's not. He says, yes, it is. The president's eyes are closed. He's sleeping. That's not legal tender. That's a nap. The audience laughs. Dave waits. Then he says, is that joke punching down? The homeless man is the hero of the joke. He's smarter than me. He's funnier than me. He's the one who gets the punchline. So who got punched? Nobody. That's the point. Comedy is not a fist. It's a handshake. But you have to be willing to reach out. He goes deeper. He says that the real problem with modern comedy is that audiences have forgotten how to listen. They come to the show with a checklist. They're waiting for the part where they get to be angry. They're not listening for meaning. They're listening for ammunition. They want to leave the club and say, can you believe he said that? Instead of, can you believe I felt that? Dave says, when I was a kid, my father told me something. He said, son, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I didn't understand it then. I understand it now. A comedian should never be the smartest person in the room. The audience should be smarter. The comedian is just the tour guide. They decide if they want to jump. This is where the video takes a turn. Dave stops being the philosopher and starts being the historian. He talks about the old days, the Apollo, the Chitlin Circuit, the comedians who came before him, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Mons Mabley. He says those comedians didn't have the luxury of trigger warnings. They didn't have the luxury of a safe space. They had a microphone and a prayer. And they told the truth about race, about poverty, about addiction, about abuse. And they didn't tell it carefully. They told it raw, because the truth is raw. You can't polish the truth. You can only wrap it in a laugh so it doesn't cut you when you swallow it. He tells a story about Richard Pryor, the night Pryor set himself on fire. Freebasing cocaine. He ran down the street in flames. Dave says, people remember that as a tragedy. I remember it as a metaphor. Pryor was on fire because he told the truth for so long that the truth caught up to him. He didn't burn because of the drugs. He burned because he couldn't turn it off. He couldn't stop seeing the world as a joke, and the joke turned on him. That's the danger. That's the warning label Dave is stamping on this entire video. Comedy is not a career. It's a calling. And callings destroy you if you don't respect them. You have to rest. You have to walk away. You have to touch grass. You have to remember that the people laughing at you are not your fans. They are your witnesses. And witnesses don't owe you anything. We're about 20 minutes in now. Dave is pacing. He's restless. He takes off his blazer, throws it on a chair off camera. He's wearing a plain white t-shirt now. He looks smaller, more human. He starts talking about his children. This is rare. But here, he opens the door just a crack. He says, my son asked me once, Dad, why do people get so mad at you? I said, because I remind them of something they forgot. He said, "What did they forget?" I said, "That they are not in control." He lets that sit. Then he continues. "My son is 12. He doesn't understand why adults yell at each other on the internet. He thinks it's stupid. And he's right. It is stupid. But it's also dangerous. Because when you yell at a comedian, you're not yelling at the joke. You're yelling at the mirror. And the mirror doesn't care. The mirror just reflects." He says that the greatest gift his children have given him is perspective. He used to care about reviews, about ratings, about what the critics said. Now, he says, the only review I care about is the one I get at the breakfast table. If my kids still want to sit next to me, I'm doing okay. If they move to the other side of the table, I know I went too far. That's the line. Not a legal line, not a network line, a human line. And that line moves. It moves every day. It moves depending on who is sitting in the room. And that's why Dave refuses to write jokes in advance. He says he writes premises. He writes topics. But the actual joke, the wording, the timing, that happens in the moment. He says a joke written on paper is a corpse. A joke told on stage is a living thing. You have to breathe into it. And you can't breathe into it until you see the whites of their eyes. This is why his specials feel so different from everyone else's. Everyone else is reciting. Dave is discovering. You can see him think. You can see him change his mind in real time. He'll start a sentence, stop, tilt his head, and go a different direction. That's not bad memory. That's honesty. He's showing you the process. He's letting you watch him build the airplane while it's in the air. Now he's talking about the internet. He hates the internet. Not because he's old, because he's observant. He says, the internet is a place where context goes to die. He gives an example. He tells a joke from one of his specials. A joke about a sensitive topic. He writes it out on a piece of paper. He holds the paper up to the camera. Then he takes a lighter and sets the paper on fire. He watches it burn. He says, that's what the internet does to a joke. It burns away the delivery, the facial expression, the tone, the relationship with the audience. All that's left is ash, and then people get mad at the ash. He says that if you want to critique a comedian, you have to be in the room. You have to feel the air. You have to see who is laughing and who is not. You have to hear the gasps, the silence, the nervous giggles. Without that, you're not critiquing comedy. You're critiquing a transcript, and a transcript is not a performance. A transcript is a corpse. This is the part of the video where he gets quiet again. Real quiet. He sits back down on the stool. He picks up the cigarette. He doesn't light it, just holds it, rolls it between his fingers. He says, I've been doing this for 30 years. 30 years of standing in front of strangers and asking them to trust me. And every night, before I walk on stage, I get scared. Not nervous, scared. I think, what if tonight is the night I have nothing? And then I walk out anyway. And I open my mouth, and something comes out. And I realize that it was never me. The comedy comes through me, not from me. He looks up, straight into the camera, straight into you. And he says, that's the secret. That's the whole thing. You have to get out of your own way. You have to stop trying to be clever. You have to stop trying to be safe. You have to stop trying to be liked. You just have to be there. Or it won't. And either way, you show up tomorrow and try again. He stands up. He stretches his back. He looks tired. But it's a good tired. The tired of someone who did the work. He says, thank you for listening. That's the hardest part. Not talking. Listening. He nods once. He walks off the stage. The screen fades to black. And you're just sitting there. The video is over. 30 minutes. Maybe longer now with my talking. But here's the thing. You don't feel like you watched a video. You feel like you had a conversation. You feel like Dave was in the room with you. And that's not an accident. That's the craft. That's the magic. He makes you forget that you're watching. He makes you feel like you're part of something. That's what comedy is supposed to do. It's not supposed to make you feel safe. It's supposed to make you feel alive. And if you're not a little bit scared, you're not really alive. You're just existing. And Dave Chappelle doesn't exist. He lives. And he wants you to live too. All right, I need to walk around. My heart is beating too fast. That man has a way of getting under your skin. But in a good way. In the way that makes you want to be better. Not perfect, just better. Just a little more honest. Just a little more brave. I'm going to watch that again tomorrow, and I bet I'll hear something different. Because that's the other thing about Dave. His work keeps growing. It keeps changing. It ages like wine or like a wound, depending on the day. But it never goes stale. It never stops asking the question. And the question is always the same. Why are we here? And why are we laughing? I don't know the answer, but I'm glad he's asking. The sound of a chair creaking as she stands up. Okay, that's it. That's the commentary. Go watch the video yourself. But don't watch it on your phone. Don't watch it while you're scrolling. Watch it in the dark, alone, with good speakers, and listen. Really listen. You'll thank me later. Or you'll be mad at me. Either way, that's comedy.